I didn't think my normal Tuesday would turn into such a mess, but then my brother's wife, Vanessa, showed up at my door. Her two kids were clinging to her, and she had so many bags with her. I could tell this wasn't just a quick hello. My name is Rachel, and until that moment, I had managed to maintain a delicate equilibrium between my marriage and my mental health. Serving as an assistant editor-in-chief required that my home be a haven, a serene retreat where I could unwind after a day filled with tight deadlines and challenging authors. Then came the unexpected interruption. "Surprise!" Vanessa exclaimed, her lips curling into a smile that I had come to recognize as her precursor to a request. "The kids and I thought we'd drop by for a little visit," she continued. Before I could grasp the full extent of the situation, her son Oliver sprinted past me into the house, with his sister Chloe hot on his heels. The sound of something shattering in my living room made me cringe. "Oh, don't worry about that," Vanessa said, dismissing it with a wave of her hand. "Kids will be kids, right?" I remained rooted to the spot at the door as she maneuvered two enormous suitcases inside, followed by what seemed like a mobile closet. "How long are you planning to stay?" I asked. "Just until things settle down," she replied vaguely, settling in as though she owned the place. "Didn't Ethan tell you?" I was sure he'd mentioned it. My husband, of course. As if on cue, Ethan chose that moment to return from work early, a rarity for him. His face brightened at the sight of his sister, and they embraced as if it had been years since their last meeting, rather than the mere 3 weeks since our last obligatory family gathering. "You made it!" he cheered, assisting with the luggage. "Rachel, isn't this wonderful? The house will finally feel lively." I detected the subtle stress on "finally" and felt a knot form in my stomach. Our home was already vibrant with discussions, laughter, and the occasional spirited debate over punctuation. The absence of children causing chaos didn't mean we dwelled in a tomb. "Ethan," I began, my voice measured, "can we have a word?" He followed me into the kitchen, his smile unwavering. The sounds of Oliver and Chloe rampaging up and down the stairs echoed through the house, reminiscent of overly energetic puppies staking their claim. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I asked. "I thought you'd worry too much if I told you ahead of time," he replied, reaching for the coffee maker. "It's only for a while. Vanessa's dealing with some issues with her ex and needs a safe place for the kid. And our house was offered up without a discussion?" I pressed. "They're family, Rachel. We have 3 spare rooms gathering dust. What's the harm?" Before I could answer, another crash sounded from upstairs, followed by laughter and the distinct noise of running water. "I better check on that," Ethan said, already moving toward the stairs. "Try to relax, okay? This will be good for us." I watched him dash upstairs, leaving me alone in a kitchen that suddenly seemed far too small. My phone vibrated, a message from my best friend Lila. "Still on for wine night tomorrow?" I was about to respond when Vanessa appeared, her phone glued to her ear. "Oh, Rachel, I hope it's okay, but I've invited Mom and Dad over too. They're concerned about the kids adjusting, and you know how Mom worries. They'll be here Thursday." She vanished before I could utter a word, her voice trailing down the hall as she spoke with my in-laws. Clutching the kitchen counter, I felt the color drain from my face as the full weight of my predicament settled in. My once peaceful home was under siege, my husband had made plans behind my back, and my mother-in-law, who had once critiqued me for being too absorbed by my career to be a suitable wife, would be arriving in 2 days. I typed a swift reply to Lila, "Make it a bottle, maybe 2. We need to talk." From above, the sound of something pricey breaking was followed by Ethan's laughter and his sister's exaggerated apologies. But it was the sight of Vanessa's divorce papers peering out from her half-open purse on my counter that sent a chill through me. This situation wasn't going to be temporary at all. The first 48 hours felt like an episode of a reality show I never agreed to join. I retreated to my home office, the last bastion of calm, when the smell of something burning snapped me back to reality. I dashed into the kitchen to find Oliver manning the stove, the burner turned to high as he attempted to craft a grilled cheese. Vanessa, meanwhile, was sprawled on the sofa, deeply engrossed in her phone. "Oliver, step back," I instructed, quickly moving the smoking pan aside. "Where's your mom?" "Right here," Vanessa called out, her gaze fixed on her screen. "He's fine. He makes his own lunch all the time at home." The charred remains of what used to be my favorite non-stick pan suggested otherwise. I swallowed my initial retort, heeding my grandmother's counsel to pick my battles wisely. Instead, I prepared Oliver a proper sandwich, trying not to dwell on how hungrily he devoured it, as if he hadn't eaten all day. "Hey, while you're at it," Vanessa chimed in, "could you whip up something for me too? I'm starving." Before I could reply, Ethan burst in, his arms laden with shopping bags. "Family dinner tonight," he proclaimed. Mom and Dad are coming early. Surprise. My stomach sank. Early? They weren't due until tomorrow. Mom couldn't wait. He beamed, unloading groceries. And here's the best part. They're bringing Aunt Susan and Uncle Mike too. I watched as he and Vanessa exchanged a high five, their excitement reminiscent of teenagers planning an escapade. The kitchen counter vanished under a pile of ingredients as Ethan flourished one recipe after another. Honey, I began cautiously, I have that big manuscript deadline tomorrow. Remember? Come on, Rachel, Vanessa interjected, finally tearing herself away from her phone. Family comes first. You can do your little editing thing anytime. I caught Ethan nodding in agreement with his sister, and I felt a fissure form within me. My little editing thing pays half the mortgage on this house, I retorted. Speaking of the house, Vanessa added, her tone shifting to something more serious. Mom mentioned you two might be thinking of moving to a bigger, more family-friendly place. The expression that flashed across Ethan's face confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't merely one of Vanessa's offhand remarks. They had been discussing our future without me. I need some air, I muttered, making for the door, but Ethan grabbed my arm. Where are you going? Are you? My parents will be here in an hour, Ethan had said. My response was swift. Then I'll be back in 59 minutes. I drove to Lila's house almost mechanically, my hand trembling on the steering wheel. Upon arriving, Lila assessed my state and wordlessly poured 2 glasses of wine. They're planning to stay permanently, aren't they? She asked after I'd recounted the day's events. Worse, I replied. I think Ethan's been orchestrating this with them. He's never home early, never cooks, never organizes family events. Yet suddenly he's the superhost? Have you checked your joint account lately? She inquired, her voice laced with caution. I paused, my wine glass halted midair. Why? I asked. Just a hunch, Lila responded. But moving to a family-friendly house takes money. Her words propelled me to action. I pulled out my phone, logged into our banking app, and felt my heart sink. Several large transfers had been made to a savings account I didn't recognize, all within the past month. I have to go, I declared, standing so abruptly that I nearly toppled my wine glass. When I returned home, the house was bustling. Geraldine had commandeered my kitchen, rearranging everything to suit her tastes. Harold was ensconced in my reading chair, and Vanessa's kids were a whirlwind around the dining room table. Aunt Susan critiqued my curtains while I caught a snippet of Ethan and Vanessa's hushed conversation in the hallway. Did you get Rachel to sign those papers yet? Vanessa whispered. Not yet, Ethan responded. But Mom says once the house transfer is done, it won't matter. Rachel will have to adjust, or... He cut off abruptly as I appeared, his expression morphing into one of shock. Behind him, Vanessa's smirk was unmistakable. Perfect timing, she said smugly. Mom's just about to serve dinner. Hope you don't mind, but we had to dispose of some of your old dishes to make room for hers. They were a bit dated. I forced a smile, my mind racing with plans. No problem at all. What's family for, right? The next morning, I secluded myself in my office, but instead of editing manuscripts, I delved into our financial records, determined to uncover the full extent of the betrayal. The papers Vanessa mentioned weren't merely about transferring the house. Ethan had been systematically shifting our assets for months. As I sat absorbed in this revelation, my phone buzzed with another message from him. Mom's making her famous pot roast tonight, don't work too. I pushed the text aside, focusing instead on an alarming email from our bank. The joint account into which I had diligently contributed over the years had been stealthily depleted, with regular transfers funneled into an account under his name alone. The final transfer had been executed just days before Vanessa's unsolicited arrival. My concentration broke with a knock. I glanced at the documents Geraldine handed me. They weren't about school enrollments at all. They were property transfer forms, complete with Ethan's signature. Where did these come from? I inquired, my voice even. Ethan left them for you, she responded smoothly. It's merely a formality, dear. You understand how these processes go. But indeed, I did understand. My editorial expertise had honed my ability to scrutinize the smallest details. These documents were designed to strip me of any claim to our home, the home I had invested in financially and emotionally. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Lila. Have you checked the safety deposit box? The safety deposit box at the bank held not only my grandmother's precious jewelry and my emergency cash, but also the original house deed with my name prominently listed as co-owner. I grabbed my purse and keys, ready to leave, but Vanessa blocked the doorway. Where do you think you're going? Dinner's about to start. Step aside, I stated quietly. Vanessa stood firm, a smirk forming. Ethan was right about you. You really don't grasp the essence of family, do you? I met her gaze squarely. No, Vanessa. It's you who doesn't comprehend the consequences of your action. Reaching into my pocket, I dialed a number I had prepared earlier. Hello, Detective Martinez. I'm ready to proceed with that fraud investigation we discussed. As the words left my lips, the color drained from Vanessa's face. In the background, Geraldine's grip faltered, sending a plate crashing to the floor. You wouldn't dare, Vanessa hissed. We're family. With a calm I hardly felt, I replied, Indeed, families should protect each other. That's why I've documented every conversation since overhearing your little scheme. Right then, my phone signaled a new email from my attorney acknowledging the evidence I had forwarded earlier. Now, if you'll excuse me, I continued, stepping past her stunned figure. At the bank, the stark emptiness of the safety deposit box confirmed my fears. My grandmother's jewels and my reserve funds were gone. The bank manager, uncomfortable, shuffled beside me. It appears your husband accessed the box last week, he noted, handing me a form. The signature on the document was an impeccable forgery of my own. As I processed the betrayal, my phone buzzed once more. It was Lila. Rachel, where are you? Finn's been trying to reach you. He says it's urgent. I pocketed the phone, my mind racing. Ethan's deceit ran deeper than I feared. I sent a quick text to Lila. Meet me at the park in 20 minutes and come alone, Harold's text read. I glanced at Lila, who was already closing her laptop. Go, she urged. I'll be on standby if you need me. The park was deserted, save for Harold, who sat on our usual bench looking wearied as though the weight of recent events had aged him prematurely. I tried to intervene, he confessed as I approached. But Geraldine, she believes this is for the best. For the best? I repeated incredulously. They're erasing my existence. Not exactly, he countered, producing an envelope from his coat. They're after your future. He handed me the envelope heavy with significance. But they overlooked one thing, your past. Puzzled, I extracted a letter penned in my grandmother's familiar scrawl, dated shortly before her passing, a letter never before seen by my eyes, addressed poignantly to me. How did you come by this? I asked. Geraldine snatched it from your study, Harold explained. She intended to destroy it, but I couldn't let her. Your grandmother foresaw potential troubles like these. Read it, he urged, standing. As he walked away, he left me with a parting thought. Remember, Rachel, not all family ties are of blood. Often, the strongest bonds are those we forge by choice. Alone, I unfolded the letter, each word resonating deeply, urging vigilance not just over tangible assets, but over my integrity and self-worth as well. I was still absorbing her message when I returned to the car parked outside what was once unequivocally my home. Through the front windows, I saw Ethan exit, phone to his ear, his voice terse. Ensure those accounts are secured by dawn. Watching him, this imposter donning my husband's guise felt surreal. Vanessa orchestrated the rearrangement of my belongings inside, directing movers with a cavalier disregard for the history of each piece. In the kitchen, Geraldine likely plotted yet another family gathering that I would abstain from attending. My phone vibrated with a message from Oliver. Mom says you're being selfish. Coming home? The concept of home now seemed a cruel irony. I stepped from the car just as Ethan ended his call. His expression shifted from relief to apprehension upon noticing me. Where have you been? He demanded. Mom's frantic. Is she? I brushed past him, heading towards the front door. Or is she more concerned about As I entered, I caught Vanessa directing movers who were handling my grandmother's antique writing desk. Stop, I commanded firmly. Vanessa turned, her smirk fading slightly. Look who decided to show up, she taunted. We're just clearing space for a study area for the kids. They need it more than you ever did. That desk isn't for you to dispose of. I snapped back. Ethan intervened with a shaky confidence. Actually, according to the deed. The forged deed? I faced him squarely. The one with my signature falsely duplicated? The movers halted, exchanging uneasy glances. Geraldine stepped out from the kitchen, her expression one of feigned concern. Rachel, dear, you're clearly distressed. Clearly, I echoed, my voice icy as I pulled out my phone. Just as the bank manager was disturbed when I unveiled the forged authorization form, and just as upset as my publisher's legal team was upon discovering fraudulent requests for my record, Ethan's complexion turned pale. You're bluffing, he stammered. I hit play on a recording. It was Ethan's earlier conversation about securing the accounts. Then, I displayed an email from my attorney confirming the commencement of a fraud investigation. Get out, Vanessa spat, her veneer of control slipping. No, I retorted sharp. You get out. All of you. You have 1 hour. This is still my house, Ethan tried to assert, though his voice betrayed his doubt. Check your phone. I countered. As he read, his phone lit up with the notification of the emergency injunction my lawyer had filed, freezing all assets and halting any property transfers. "You can't do this," Geraldine cried out. We're family. Family doesn't forge signatures or steal inheritances, nor does family attempt to erase someone from their own life, I declared, my laughter bitter. Oliver and Chloe appeared hesitantly at the top of the stairs. "Mom? What's going on?" Vanessa moved to shield them as if I posed a threat. "Nothing, dear," she lied smoothly. "Your Aunt Rachel is just overreacting." "No," I corrected, locking eyes with my niece and nephew. "Your Aunt Rachel is taking a stand. Something about integrity, something your mother should be teaching you." I turned to the movers. "Please return everything to its original place. I'll compensate you generously for the inconvenience." They nodded, immediately setting to work. Finn tried to approach me, his usual charm at the ready. "Honey, we can discuss this. The police will be here in 20 minutes, I cut him off. "They're very interested in the forged document. It's your decision whether you want to be here when they arrive." The next quarter hour was pandemonium. Vanessa's fury escalated. Geraldine sobbed uncontrollably, and Harold observed the chaos with silent resignation. Yet eventually they left, taking their chaos with them. As Ethan made his way out last, he paused to throw a parting shot. "You'll regret this," he said with a scowl. I thought of my grandmother's letter, her words about standing my ground echoing in my mind. "No," I replied firmly. "For the first time in years, I don't regret anything." With that, I closed the door on my past and locked it, sealing away the old life I was ready to leave behind. 3 days after expelling them from my life, I returned home to an unlocked front door and the unexpected sound of music pouring out. For a moment, I stood bewildered, thinking perhaps I had entered the wrong home. The house was transformed, every surface adorned with flowers and decorations, the air rich with the aroma of Geraldine's signature pot roast. A full-blown party was underway in what was once my living room. The entire social circle of my in-laws mingled there, sipping wine from my grandmother's crystal glasses. Vanessa was animatedly conversing by the fireplace, reigning over the gathering as if she were the mistress of the house, while Oliver and Chloe darted around the room, handing out plates of cake. Suddenly, Ethan was by my side, his demeanor all smiles and charm. "Rachel, you're just in time for the announcement." "What announcement?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the din of the party. Geraldine clinked her glass for attention, and the room hushed. Familiar faces from the neighborhood, Ethan's colleagues, and even a few of my own co-workers turned their attention towards us. "As you know," Geraldine started, her voice ringing out, "this lovely home has been in our family for generations." That statement was the first of many falsehoods that night. The house was mine, bought with the inheritance from my grandmother. Geraldine continued, "And now, thanks to Ethan's wonderful planning, it will remain a true family home, with Vanessa and her children moving in permanently." Applause filled the room. A glass of champagne was thrust into my hand. Across the crowd, I caught Harold's eye. He quickly looked away, his expression one of shame. "The papers are all signed," Ethan whispered to me, a cold smile on his lips. "You might have frozen some accounts, but you forgot about the power of attorney you gave me last year when you were in the hospital. Everything's legal now." The glass slipped from my numb fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. The sound caught Oliver's attention, and he ran over. "Aunt Rachel, Mom says we're keeping your office as our playroom. Can we paint it?" Behind him, Vanessa's face lit up with a triumphant glow. My book was nowhere to be seen. "Where are my things?" My voice cracked as I spoke. Ethan responded with a slick ease. "In storage. We'll sort through them later. Now smile. People are watching." And they were. Every eye in the room seemed glued to me, watching, waiting for my reaction. This was their plan. Back me into a corner, surround me with witnesses, and coerce me into accepting their version of events, or risk appearing unreasonable. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Lila. "Got the evidence. Police are on their way." "Hold on." But before I could even think of replying, Geraldine clinked her glass again for attention. "And one more announcement. Ethan, would you like to share the wonderful news?" He stepped forward, the charm plastered on his face. "Thanks. Rachel and I have decided to take a break. She'll be staying with friends while we sort things out. It's all very amicable." Sympathetic murmurs filled the room. I caught my coworkers exchanging glances, no doubt recalling the times I had defended Ethan's actions. "That's not true," I managed to say, but my voice was swallowed by the noise. Vanessa moved closer, her words a venomous whisper meant only for my ears. "Face it, Rachel. You lost. The house is ours legally. Your precious grandmother's things are gone. Even your colleagues think you're having a breakdown. Just walk away while you still have some dignity." I felt the walls closing in, the room spinning around me. Everything I'd built and protected was being dismantled before an audience. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw Oliver lift one of my grandmother's crystal glasses, poised to throw it to his sister. "Catch, Chloe!" he shouted. The glass sailed through the air in slow motion. In that moment, I faced a choice. Let it shatter like everything else in my life or seize control. I lunged forward and caught the glass inches from the ground. "Actually," I began, my voice rising, clear and steady, commanding the sudden silence of the room, "I have an announcement of my own." The front door swung open and Detective Martinez stepped through, flanked by two uniformed officers. "Perfect timing," I said, locking eyes with the stunned Ethan. "Let's discuss fraud, forgery, and the real meaning of family, shall we?" The aftermath of the party was like watching dominoes topple in slow motion. Detective Martinez worked systematically. "Vanessa's moving to Seattle," Harold mentioned as I walked up to him. "She's looking for a fresh start. The kids are adjusting." I thought about Oliver and Chloe, tangled in their mother's scheme. "They'll get through it," I said. "Kids are resilient like that, just like you were," he added with a sad smile. "Geraldine still thinks she did nothing wrong. She visits Ethan every week, convincing him he's the victim." "And you?" I asked. "I'm selling the house," he said softly. "Too many bad memories." I understood completely. My own house had taken months to feel like mine again. I had to clear out their belongings and reclaim each space. My office was filled with my books and papers again. The kitchen was alive with my grandmother's recipes, not Geraldine's critical comment. My phone vibrated with a message from Lila about our weekend plans. Life had found a new, more genuine pace. "There's something else," Harold said, pulling something from his jacket. "We found this in Geraldine's stuff when we were clearing out the house." He handed me an old envelope with my grandmother's handwriting. "For Rachel. When the storm passed." My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter from just before she died and a small key. The letter said, "My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, you've come through a storm I always feared. I've watched you build your life carefully, but I've seen the threats too. People who confuse control with love, possession with family. This key," she continued, "opens a safe deposit box at her old bank. It's got family photos, important papers, and a trust fund I didn't know about. She wrote that the toughest walls aren't the ones around our homes, but the ones we put up around our heart. And sometimes those walls have to come down for us to really live." Harold gently put his hand on my shoulder. "She knew, didn't she? Even back then, she knew." I nodded, carefully folding the letter. Driving home, I passed the coffee shop where Ethan and I first met. It didn't hurt to think about anymore. It was just part of a story that taught me more about strength than weakness. At home, I made tea in my grandmother's pot and sat at her writing desk. The house felt snug and peaceful around me. On my laptop, a new document was open, the cursor blinking, ready for the next chapter of my story. I had been trying to write down my experiences, but it was hard to get it right. How do you describe the moment you realize that family isn't just those related by blood, or explain that sometimes getting back at someone isn't as important as saving yourself? Then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of Oliver and Chloe, all smiles, standing under a "Welcome to Seattle" sign. There were no words, just the picture, but I understood the deeper meaning. Some connections hold, even when family ties strain. I turned back to my laptop and started typing again. This time, I didn't focus on the betrayal or the need for revenge. Instead, I wrote about rebuilding, about the necessity sometimes of letting everything you know crumble so that you can put together something more honest and true from the remains. As I wrote, the sun dipped below the horizon, filling my room with a warm glow that felt like it was mine alone. The quiet of the evening wrapped around me, a gentle reminder that in this new space I'd created, I could shape my narrative in ways that healed rather than hurt.